Discipline always begins in the smallest corners of your day. You don't have to conquer the world before lunch, but you do need to conquer yourself. That's where it starts, not with a massive overhaul of your entire life, but with a quiet commitment. Today, I will keep my word to myself. That's discipline. Most people think they lose to the big things. The failed career, the broken relationship, the missed opportunity. But it wasn't the big thing that brought them down. It was the string of small promises they broke to themselves. Promises they didn't think mattered. You see, when you break a promise to someone else, there's guilt. There's a reaction, but when you break a promise to yourself, there's silence. No one calls you out. No one holds you accountable, and that silence is dangerous, because over time you stop trusting yourself. That's why the first step to discipline is making small promises and keeping them. That's how you build trust with the most important person in your life, you. Start with something simple. Maybe it's waking up when your alarm rings the first time, not snooze. Not just 5 more minutes, but discipline. Get up. That single act tells your brain, I can count on me. And that starts a chain reaction. Make a promise to drink a glass of water in the morning, to read 1 page of a good book, to stretch for 5 minutes, to walk outside for 10. None of that takes talent. None of it requires brilliance, but it does require intention. That's the key, because discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional, about choosing your direction instead of drifting through the day. The world is full of people who want to change their lives in one dramatic leap. They wait for New Year's. They wait for motivation. They wait for some emotional event to push them. But success doesn't work like that. It rewards the steady hand, the person who decides today, I do the work. The person who isn't afraid to be boring, to be consistent, to be deliberate. I knew a young man who wanted to lose weight. He bought new gym clothes, fancy shoes, all the supplements. He even posted on social media, new me starts now, but he skipped the first workout, then the second, then the third. Why? Because he made a show of the big decision, but ignored the small promises. He thought motivation would do the work. It doesn't. Discipline does. And discipline isn't loud. It doesn't post. It doesn't announce. It just shows up. The person who wakes up early every day doesn't need to tell the world. You can see it in their life. You can feel it in their presence. They've built confidence by keeping their word day after day to the only person that matters in the beginning, themselves. You want to change your finances. Make a small promise. Track your spending for 10 minutes a day. Want to grow your mind. Promise to read for 15 minutes. Want to build your body. Do 5 push-ups every morning. That's it. The magic isn't in the size of the action. It's in the consistency. Because what begins as a small effort becomes a habit. And habits are the foundation of transformation. It's like planting a seed. No one expects fruit the next day. But if you water it daily, give it light, protect it from weeds, it grows, slowly at first, then all at once. That's discipline. You plant a small promise today, and you water it with action. Tomorrow, it grows a little stronger. Next week, it starts to sprout. Next month, it's a small tree, and in time it bears fruit, not because of luck, but because of daily attention. And here's the secret. The size of the promise doesn't matter. What matters is that you keep it. Because the moment you start keeping promises to yourself, no matter how small, you send a message to your subconscious mind, we are changing, we are rising, we are not who we used to be. And your mind believes you. It adjusts your identity. It starts treating you like a person of action. That's why this works. because change isn't about doing 1,000 things once. It's about doing one thing 1,000 times. And if you want to become a person of discipline, you start by acting like one, even before you feel like it. You show up for yourself, quietly, consistently. No fanfare. Just small victories. And those victories compound. They build a new version of you one day at a time. And it all starts with a single, small promise kept. One of the most powerful decisions you'll ever make is to design your day on purpose. Because, let me tell you, life has a structure whether you choose it or not. Either you build it or someone else does it for you. And if you don't run the day will run you. Most people think they're free because their schedule is wide open. But freedom without structure quickly becomes chaos. It becomes wasted time, missed opportunities, and a pile of regret you can't explain. Discipline thrives in a well-built structure. The mistake people often make is trying to rely on motivation to get them through the day. But motivation comes and goes. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. But structure stays. It doesn't ask how you feel. It just waits for you to show up and do what needs to be done. Now, when I say structure, I don't mean every minute of your day has to be rigid or robotic. I'm talking about intentional design. I'm talking about taking control of how you spend your time, your energy, and your attention. You need to know where your hours go, because where your time goes, your life goes. Don't let your calendar be a mystery. Build it like a blueprint. Create blocks of time that serve your goals, not your distractions. Start with the mornings. If you win the morning, you stand a good chance of winning the day. Don't leave your morning to chance. Decide now what the first hour of your day will look like. Is it quiet time, reading time, planning time? Whatever it is, make it intentional. If the first thing you do every day is scroll through your phone, then guess what? Your day belongs to the world, not to you. But if you begin with focus, with purpose, with clarity, you set a tone that carries through the next 23 hours. Next, you need to carve out space for what matters most. If you don't schedule your priorities, they'll get buried by your obligations. Time for health, time for learning, time for your relationship. Put them on the calendar like important meetings. Because they are. When people say, "I didn't have time," what they usually mean is, "I didn't make time." There's a big difference. And the disciplined person knows it. You see, structure is not a prison, it's a path. A good routine is like a trail through the wilderness. It guides you, it protects you from the weeds, and it keeps you moving forward even when your motivation is nowhere to be found. A strong structure turns success into a system. You don't have to guess what to do next. You've already decided. Now, you just follow the plan. And every time you follow through, your discipline gets a little stronger. There's something else a good structure gives you. Margin. When you plan well, you don't live in reaction. You're not rushing from one task to another. You're not overwhelmed by the urgent. You've created space to think, to breathe, to rest, to reflect. Most people are not exhausted because they're working hard. They're exhausted because they're working without rhythm. No structure, no flow, just chaos. But structure brings rhythm, and rhythm brings energy. Now, it won't always feel exciting. That's the trade-off. A well-structured life can feel repetitive at times, but don't confuse repetition with boredom. A pianist plays the same scales every day. An athlete runs the same drills. A writer shows up to the same blank page. The masters of any field understand the power of repetition inside a structure. They don't fight it. They embrace it because that's where progress lives. That's where discipline is built. If you ever feel lost or stuck, one of the first places to look is your daily structure. Ask yourself, do my days reflect my dreams, or do they just reflect distractions? Am I designing my life, or am I just reacting to it? The answers to those questions will tell you everything you need to know. Building a structure that serves you takes time. You'll have to experiment. You'll have to make adjustments. You'll have to protect it from people and things that want to steal your time. But once you find your rhythm, once you create a structure that aligns with your values and your vision, everything changes. You wake up with purpose, you move through the day with clarity, and you go to bed with the quiet satisfaction of knowing you lived this day, well cut the excuses, and faced the mirror, one of the hardest, yet most liberating, moments in a person's life is the moment. They look in the mirror and say, "It's on me," not the economy, not their parents, not the weather, not the government. Just me. That's the moment when change becomes possible. Because until you take full ownership of your life, discipline can't take root. You can't grow a strong oak tree on weak soil, and you can't build a strong future on excuses. Now I understand why people make excuses. I've done it. You've done it. Everyone has. We do it to protect our ego, to justify our lack of action, to make peace with our comfort zone. It's easier to say, "I don't have time," than to admit, "I haven't managed my time." It's easier to blame circumstances than to face the fact that we've let our standards slip. But excuses are illusions. They feel good in the moment, but they steal from you in the long run. They rob you of growth, of clarity, of responsibility, and ultimately of results. The person who builds discipline starts by telling themselves the truth. They take off the mask. They stop pointing fingers. They stop hiding behind reasons. They stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "How can I?" That single shift, from blame to ownership, unlocks doors most people never even see. Because once you own it, you can change it, you can shape it, you can improve it, but you can't fix what you won't admit now. I'm not saying you're to blame for everything that happens to you. Life throws curveballs. Things go wrong that are outside your control. But here's the difference. Your circumstances may not be your fault, but your response is always your responsibility. You didn't get to choose the storm, but you get to choose how you steer the ship. That's the power of discipline. It gives you back the wheel. There was a man who came to me once, frustrated that he wasn't making progress. He said, "I've tried everything and nothing works." I asked him what he'd tried. He listed a few things, and I said, "That's not everything. That's a few things. There's a difference." He paused. Then he smiled. He got it. You see, the language we use reveals the truth about our mindset. If you say, "I've tried everything," your brain believes there are no more options. But if you say, "I haven't found what works yet," you're still searching, you're still in the game. And that's what discipline does. It keeps you in the game when excuses try to pull you out. There's another reason people avoid facing the mirror. It's uncomfortable. It's not easy to say, "I haven't done what I said I would." It stings to admit, "I've let myself down," but that discomfort, that sting, is not your enemy. It's your wake-up call. It's your conscience reminding you that you were made for more. And if you'll listen, really listen, it can be the most honest and helpful voice you'll ever hear. When you face the mirror, you see two things. First, you see where you've fallen short. That's important. Not to beat yourself up, but to take inventory. Second, and more importantly, you see potential. You see the person you can become if you'll rise up, clean things up, and get to work. The mirror shows both the problem and the solution, and the disciplined person uses both. That's why honesty is a critical part of discipline. If you're not honest, you'll never know where you really stand. And if you don't know where you stand, how can you make a plan to move forward? You'll be aiming in the dark. Discipline requires clarity, and clarity comes from truth. Tell yourself where you are. Tell yourself where you've been, then tell yourself where you're going. That's the roadmap. People often ask, what's the first step to getting better? I tell them, tell the truth out loud to yourself. That's the beginning of power, because the moment you say it, really say it, you bring the unseen into the light. And once it's in the light, you can do something about it. But as long as it stays in the shadows, hidden under excuses, wrapped in blame, it controls you. You may not see the chains, but they're there. The chain of self-deception, the chain of postponement, the chain of feeling stuck. And the only way to break those chains is to face the mirror. No filter, no spin, just truth. There's strength in that kind of self-confrontation. It builds internal courage, it builds resilience, and it builds trust with yourself. Because every time you look in the mirror and tell the truth, you're saying to yourself, I'm not afraid of growth. I'm not afraid of responsibility. I'm not afraid of doing what it takes. And little by little, that mindset transforms you into a person of discipline, character, and lasting achievement. Stay consistent. Not perfect. One of the greatest misunderstandings about discipline is the idea that you have to be perfect to succeed. That somehow, if you miss a day, you failed. If you fall short once, you're done. That mindset is not only incorrect, it's destructive, because real discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency, and if you can grasp this, really understand it deep down, you'll finally give yourself permission to grow without the weight of impossible expectations. The world is filled with people who start with fire and burn out within days. They go all in on Monday and give up by Friday. Why? Because they confuse intensity with consistency. They go too hard, too fast, trying to be perfect, trying to change everything at once, and when they can't sustain it, they throw it all away. But the person who understands the power of consistency knows the secret is in showing up every single day, not flawlessly, but faithfully. If you miss a workout, don't cancel the plan. If you sleep in, don't throw out the routine. If you eat wrong, don't tear up the diet. Get back to it. One day does not define you. One slip doesn't undo your progress, but giving up, that does. And that's why the disciplined person doesn't aim for a perfect streak. They aim for a strong pattern. They know there will be bumps along the road, moments of weakness, days when they don't feel like it. But they also know that if they keep coming back again and again, the results will compound. Consistency builds identity. The more often you do something, the more it becomes who you are. A person who writes one day is someone who tried. A person who writes every day, even just a little, becomes a writer. The person who eats healthy once is experimenting. The person who does it daily, even with a few bad meals in between, becomes healthy. That's the beauty of consistency. It shapes who you are through repetition. It's like drops of water carving through stone. One drop means nothing, but 1,000 drops over time change the surface of the rock. That's what discipline does when practiced with consistency. It may not look like much today. You may not see huge changes tomorrow, but a year from now, you won't even recognize yourself, not because of one massive effort, but because of countless small ones. That's how greatness is built, not in big leaps, but in steady steps. There's a quiet confidence that grows in the person who keeps going. Every time you show up, even when you don't feel like it, you send a message to yourself. I'm serious about this. And that message builds belief. You start to trust yourself more. You begin to expect more from yourself, not in a pressured way, but in a proud way. Because now you've proven something important. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. People often say, I'll start when I'm ready. But what they don't realize is that readiness comes from doing, not waiting. You don't wait to be consistent. You choose to be. You make the decision that no matter how you feel, you'll show up, you'll write the page, you'll lift the weight, you'll drink the water, you'll study the chapter. You won't wait for perfect energy or perfect circumstances. You'll move forward with what you've got. That kind of consistency requires humility. It means being okay with slow progress. It means accepting that some days will feel like a struggle. It means letting go of the fantasy that success comes easy to anyone. It doesn't, not to the millionaire, not to the champion, not to the master of any field. They didn't succeed because they were special. They succeeded because they were consistent. There's something else. Consistency brings resilience. The more you show up, the less you're shaken by setbacks. Because when you've built a track record of showing up, one failure doesn't break you. You've seen yourself get back up too many times. You've been there before and you'll be there again, but each time you rise faster. That's what consistency trains into your soul. The habit of recovery, the bounce back muscle. Discipline, when rooted in consistency, becomes automatic. What once took willpower begins to run on momentum. At first, it's hard to show up. Later, it's hard to stop. And that's when you know you're on the right path. When the actions that once felt like a chore begin to feel like a natural part of who you are. Not because you became perfect, but because you refused to quit. Because you kept showing up. Because you stayed steady through the highs and lows, through the wins and the stumbles, through the clarity and the confusion. That's the power of consistency. It never demands that you be perfect, only that you stay in the game. Let your discipline inspire others. There's a powerful truth most people miss when they begin the journey of discipline. In the beginning, it feels like a personal mission, something quiet, something internal. You start waking up earlier. You start eating better. You start studying more, exercising more, living with purpose. And at first, it seems like it's just for you. You're the one doing the work. You're the one pushing past comfort. You're the one building habits, managing time, facing your flaws. But eventually, if you stay consistent long enough, something starts to happen. People begin to notice. They start watching. They start asking questions. Your discipline, once private, begins to echo in the lives around you. You see, we teach best by example, not by words, not by lectures, not by preaching, but by how we live. And the person who lives with discipline becomes a silent mentor to everyone who comes in contact with them. They don't walk around bragging about how focused they are or how early they rise. They just live it. And that quiet consistency day in, day out, speaks volumes. There's a kind of respect that can't be demanded. It has to be earned, and discipline earns it. People might not say it out loud, but they see it. They see when you've built self-control. They see when you no longer need external motivation. They see when you've mastered your own habits, your emotions, your calendar, your thoughts. And whether they admit it or not, they start to admire it. They start to wonder if they could do the same. Think about the impact that has. A parent who lives with discipline doesn't have to tell their children to be responsible. The children see it every morning. They see the structure. They feel the order. They notice the calm confidence that comes from someone who manages their life well. They learn by observation, and that parent, without ever saying a word, becomes a role model. The same is true in the workplace. You show up on time, not because someone's watching, but because you respect the value of time. You follow through on your word, not because someone's checking in, but because integrity matters to you. You do more than is asked, not for praise, but because excellence has become your standard. That kind of presence influences others. It lifts the room, it challenges mediocrity, it sets a new tone. Discipline, when practiced long enough, becomes contagious. People who are undisciplined either begin to change or start to feel uncomfortable in the presence of someone who's mastered their life. Why? Because discipline is attractive, not in the superficial sense, but in a deeper way. It represents strength, stability, reliability, and in a world where many feel lost, those qualities draw attention. But here's what makes it truly powerful. Your example gives people permission. Permission to try, permission to rise, permission to start over. When someone sees you wake up early, they think, maybe I can do that too. When someone hears you say no to what doesn't serve you, they think, maybe I can take control of my choices too. You become living proof that change is possible. That it's not about being gifted or lucky. It's about effort, intention, and consistency. There was a young man once who decided to stop drinking. He didn't make a big announcement. He didn't criticize others. He just made the change for himself. At first, people laughed. They mocked his decision, said it wouldn't last, but he stayed the course. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Slowly, the jokes stopped. The same people who mocked him started asking him for advice. How did you do it? What helped you stay on track? His discipline became his testimony. He didn't preach. He simply lived differently, and that life spoke louder than any speech ever could. That's the gift of discipline. It creates a ripple effect. You never know who's watching. You never know whose life is about to be changed just because they saw you change yours. And often, the people who are most impacted aren't the ones who say anything. They watch silently. They absorb it. And months or years later, they tell you, you're the reason I started. Not because you told them to, but because you showed them it could be done. Discipline turns you into a lighthouse. While others are drifting in the storm, you stand firm. While others lose their way, you remain steady. And in doing so, you guide others back to shore, not by shouting, but by shining. You become someone people trust, someone people look up to, someone others follow not because you told them to, but because your life proved it was worth following. Discipline is not something you stumble into. It's a choice, a decision, a commitment to become more than you've been, and to do more than you've done. Over the next 30 days, you have an opportunity, a rare and powerful opportunity, to take control of your habits, your time, your focus, your future. Not with a massive overhaul, but with small, daily promises, with structure that lifts you, not limits you, with honesty that faces the mirror and owns the truth, with consistency that outlasts motivation, and with an example that quietly inspires others to rise with you. You don't need to wait for the right moment. You don't need permission. You just need to begin. Because if you'll give yourself 30 days of showing up, doing the work, keeping your word, you won't just build discipline. You'll build a life that reflects purpose, a life that earns respect, a life that inspires change. And once you've tasted that kind of power, you'll never want to go back to the way things were. You'll realize that the life you want has always been waiting on the other side of your own decision to become disciplined.